afternoon and welcome to the Hertfordshire Growth Board webinar. This is the second of our internal events this year to bring members up to date on our purpose, progress and priorities. We have a packed programme for you with a full lineup of speakers as we talk through how the Growth Board is making Hertfordshire investment ready, growth ready and future ready. Now, before events get underway, just a couple of housekeeping matters. Please submit questions using the Q&A function on your taskbar. And also, please do take part in the live polls that will pop up on your screen and stay on until you get the end results. I now have the great pleasure to welcome onto your screens the new Hertfordshire Growth Board Chair, Councillor Richard Roberts, and Leader of Hertfordshire County Council. Welcome, Richard.
Thank you so much, Lucy. There we are. Okay, lovely. So I'm assuming that I'm coming through loud and clear. I'm absolutely delighted to be the new chairman of the Growth Board, which has been in existence since 2018, but it actually now a statutory committee, which is why we all had to meet in the council chamber. And for my first meeting, I was delighted that my daughter had COVID and I wasn't able to attend in person, and Chris White had to substitute for me. And what a fine job he did too. We're hearing more from Chris on climate change later. Perhaps just before I get on to Growth Board, let me just say something about the priorities that I've set for us, because they do link very closely with the agenda of the Growth Board, and absolutely why wouldn't they? But fundamentally, I want us to build out of COVID to give every resident the best possible chance to live life to the full, to get a job and to move on. For some, it's been a really difficult time. And so we've just launched a £9 million package to support COVID recovery for those with mental health, domestic abuse, but those also who want to get a new job, build new skills, and particularly working around sort of new learning, particularly around with family and adult learning, lifelong learning. So that's part A. Part B are the three fundamental cross-cutting themes of health and well-being, the environment and sustainable growth. And I think they all interlink because if we build the communities of the future, the garden towns that we will want to live in, that are connected, that link through to an enhanced environment with higher biodiversity, better cycleways, better footpaths, better connectivity, then that's going to give us, I hope, better health and well-being. And linking across into the very reason why we need a growth board and a growth agenda, and one that is subservient to the needs of the 1.2 million people who are already living in Hertfordshire, but needs to attract in new people and new thinking and new companies and new business opportunity. The reason we need to get all that right is so that the welcome is warm for business and for families. We want Hertfordshire to remain the place where you go to if you want to start a business, if you want to grow a business, and if you want to raise a family. And I'm determined that in the start of this new 4-year administration and taking over as chair of the Growth Board, and with your help, and when I say with your help, I mean the leaders across business and across our councils who come together to form the Growth Board. Together, I think we are on a really, really exciting journey. I think, as I mentioned earlier, Chris White is going to take us through some of the challenges around climate change. We have a big carbon reduction programme so that by 2030, only 8.5 years time, but by 2030, we will need to be carbon neutral as an organisation, as many of other councils in Hertfordshire and across the country have committed to doing. That is a significant challenge. But what an opportunity for business to grab the green growth agenda and to run with it. And our job is to make sure that the opportunity is there, the space is there, the employment land is there. So I think that's some of our challenge, that we've got the skills, both in our organisations but outside, to lead across these agendas. Just going back to health and well-being, I'm delighted that Paul Bairstow will be joining the board, who of course is the independent chair of the the new integrated, the ICS, integrated care system. An integrated care system means health and social care working ever closer together to improve health and well-being across the county. And it also links into what I was just talking about earlier, that sustainability agenda and our sustainable growth agenda. I think and there may be others that will be joining us on that journey. I mean, it is by no means limited to council leaders, and I'm delighted that Mark Breton from the LEP is with us, and we have Neil speaking this afternoon as well. I suppose others will speak in more detail, but I think some of the projects and some of the excellence that sits in Hertfordshire, such as our TV, film and media. I mean, up at Bovingdon Airfield in my patch, we've got the ITV studios, we've got Warner Brothers at Leavesden, we've got Elstree in Boreham Wood. But we have got really exciting new developments. For example, Brookfield Riverside is there before you. I mean, that just, look, you just want that to happen. Just, you know, pinch your fingers, click your fingers and make it happen. That looks like, really does look like the future writ large. And I think through Gilston, Hemel Garden Village, and there may be others to come, we need to take our residents with us on the journey. So when we talk about sustainable growth, we mean it, and that we try and take our residents with us, because this is going to be a real challenge. And I think I will, perhaps I'll just touch on the excitement is mass rapid transport, because of course in the future we will have no petrol, and we will have no diesel, and we will have no gas boilers in houses. These are huge agendas and huge cultural changes. And so I'm really excited that we'll be launching HEART, the full consultation in the autumn, which is our mass rapid transit system that will work. We're not quite sure how yet, but let's ask our residents to contribute how they think that should work for them. So I think without further ado, I'm going to invite Lucy to introduce our next speaker. But for me, I am delighted to be on the journey. That is the Growth Board. And I think we will together, and with all of you on this call today, we'll do great things together in Hertfordshire, and hopefully not spook the horses entirely. So thank you very much. Thank you, Lucy.
Thank you, Richard. That was a brilliant start to today. I'd now like to pass over to Patsy Dell, who's a Director of Hertfordshire Growth for the Hertfordshire Growth Board. Over to you, Patsy.
Thanks very much, Lucy, and thank you very much, Councillor Roberts, for that introduction, and welcome to this webinar, and welcome to everybody who's on here with us. I'm going to talk about what the Growth Board's been doing very quickly over the last few years. As Richard said, it was established in 2018, and it's the place leadership body for Hertfordshire. That may sound a little bit jargony, but it really is our leaders of the 11 county and district and borough councils, plus the LEP chairman, supported by our chief executives and other officers, coming together and really looking at those issues that we need to work jointly on in terms of that long-term place management, place perspective for Hertfordshire. We can only deal with them together. And that was really the genesis of the Growth Board, and the issues that we need to work together on, such as infrastructure, strategic planning, housing delivery, the environment, including climate change and sustainability, economic resilience and recovery, are absolutely the key of the Growth Board's work. And in the time that the Growth Board has been operating, we've developed a work programme, and these are some of the headline areas that we've been looking at jointly across the councils, coming together to try and form a kind of a systems way of working, so we can bear down on these issues that are greater than we could just deal with individually as organisations. And we've been, I think, really successful in that joint working moving forward. And government is now recognising us as a model collaborative working in two-tier area. And we're being quoted as a place that other two-tier areas should look at for how we've got together and are working. And Hertfordshire is now seen as somewhere where political, civic and business leadership are joined together. And that gives confidence to investors and people who want to come and work in Hertfordshire. We've got our act together, we're working together to deal with our problems. And that's a very powerful thing to be able to say to people about how we're working together. In the last year, the Growth Board has developed further, and we've maintained its momentum and forward progress through COVID. We've not lost sight of how important the future is in there. Some of the key achievements 20 have been around governance changes and establishing our work programme and priorities. In early 2020, all our leaders signed a collaborative memorandum of understanding, making a public commitment to the work that we were doing together and how we were collaborating through the Growth Board work programme. We started the year with that memorandum of understanding. We developed a joint team. Obviously, I've been privileged enough to be the director of that team, and I think the things that we're doing are absolutely right for Hertfordshire. They're really striking at the issues we share and the common cause problems that we should be tackling, particularly around delivering a sustainable and good growth agenda. We've increased our awareness of Hertfordshire at all levels of government and in our regions. People understand what our ambitions are around growth and how we're trying to tackle that. And we hope that government will continue to support us and see that Hertfordshire is a place for them to invest in and support our growth agenda. Towards the end of 2020, members agreed that we should move to a statutory joint committee, moving the work of the Growth Board into a much more transparent, open and accountable way of working, and really strengthening our governance and the ability to have a strong relationship with government. And from early 2021, we've been operating that statutory joint committee, and all our papers and any information you'd want about the Growth Board can be found at www.hertfordshiregrowthboard.com. And you can live stream and watch our meetings. Live stream. I can talk to you about what we're doing in future. And in 2021, our key priorities are future Hertfordshire, where we're looking at how we plan strategically for Hertfordshire and how we deliver our growth now and in the future in a way that addresses climate change and mitigates for the impacts of climate change and sustainability. How we're making sure that health and well-being issues lie at the core of our placemaking, and how digital connectivity and full fibre availability to our towns and all of our residents is something that we're trying to make sure is delivered. So we're really trying to have that future focus in the work that we're doing and through the joint plans that are being prepared in Southwest and North East and Central Hertfordshire. Another key focus this year and into next year is making Hertfordshire a place where people will want to invest, that we're investment ready, that people will feel that welcome from political, civic and business working and operating in Hertfordshire as a place to come and invest their money in infrastructure and the projects and the businesses that we need and want for our residents and for our economy. So creating the right conditions for investment to happen, whether it be from government or the private sector. We want to be a place that builds on that reputation of being ready and having got its act together. People have the confidence to invest money here. And we want to be delivery ready. So we've significant number of new homes to meet the needs for Hertfordshire. And we want those to be well designed and sustainably constructed. And we want them to serve the needs of all the different types of occupiers we have in Hertfordshire, from key workers through to the kind of entrepreneurs, successful economic clusters need to attract. So we need to be really focused on delivering the homes that we need. So these are the key things that we're working on and have been working on. And you're going to hear more about that from Councillor Linda Hazy and the rest of my colleagues today. So on that note, if I can pass over to Linda, Linda will pick up in more detail on the Southern Corridor work that we're doing.
Thank you very much, Patsy. I'm Linda Hazy. As most of you know, I'm leader of East Herts District Council, and I lead on the Southern Growth Corridor programme. If we could have the next slide, please, which puts the map up, that would be great. Thank you. So we have 2 growth corridors and associated programme boards, which are overseeing much of the place-based work of the board. Now, when we first started all our work as leaders, we did take a conscious decision to focus on east-west growth rather than the traditional axial growth of north-south, which is the historic view of Hertfordshire. So the corridor in the south is focused on a significant quantity of planned growth, which was already in all our district plans, and also contains a number of strategic growth locations running from Hollow Gilston in the east through to the Hemel Garden communities in the west and the Watford Junction quarter. The corridor is also key and home to key employment activities, and the Growth Board is working closely with the Local Enterprise Partnership, the LEP, to ensure that we work together to support economic recovery and continued economic success. Looking at how we can deliver these homes, we are also looking at an accelerated method of working with the board and working through government to make sure that we have an accelerated programme of delivering the homes, which are very much needed within Hertfordshire. They are very complex, some of these sites to deliver, and we need to have work on the infrastructure costs and the viability so that we do work across the county, but we also work with the government and the Homes England. Other projects that the programme board oversees and advocates for in the south is the HART project, which Richard has already mentioned, which is the Hertfordshire and Essex Rapid Transport Scheme. And this is a key transport infrastructure project being delivered by County Council, but delivered by the Growth Board and supported by the Growth Board. And there will be significant consultation later this summer, as Richard has said. However, it is already on social media. So if you do look at it, please share it, because we need to understand how our residents view this, because it is pretty revolutionary for something going across Hertfordshire. There is also the key work that's going on in the economic focus of the creative screens industries, which has been commented on, but also work within Broxbourne in regenerating the southeast of Hertfordshire, an area which has been particularly affected by the pandemic. So the Growth Board role is to add value to work already being done locally, to help with challenges that we need to work on together, and to speak to government on behalf of Hertfordshire as a whole. And through Patsy and other officers, we have got extremely good contacts within the MHCLG. And as she has said, we are recognised as being an exemplar way of coming together cross-party for the good of Hertfordshire. So the systematic way we are working with political and chief execs leads for all project means we are working together, and we have shared problems and shared challenges. And I'd like to pass on to Sharon Taylor, who can't be with us in person, but I believe she has made a short video looking at the Northern Growth Corridor. Thank you.
I lead the Northern Growth Corridor Programme Board, and like Linda, the corridor focus enables us to ensure we are planning for sustainable growth and high quality placemaking in Hertfordshire. As part of our work, we are collaborating on joint planning work for North, East and Central Hertfordshire, moving forward with the initial preparatory work for a joint strategic plan. The Northern Corridor also has oversight of the accelerating housing work, including the investigation of funding opportunities with the government and Homes England, collaboration on such areas as temporary accommodation provision, and a project to increase the off-site manufacture of new homes across Hertfordshire. Our economic and wellbeing focus is on projects like community wealth building. Led by Stevenage Borough Council, this initiative is to use the power of local procurement and investment in our economy for the benefit of our local communities, local business, and for the Hertfordshire supply chain. We are also supporting our science and technology sector, specifically the cell and gene therapeutics cluster focused in Stevenage, by looking at how we can secure important infrastructure and land and property assets to enable cluster growth. This cluster is of local, national and global significance, and the Growth Board and the Local Enterprise Partnership are working jointly to ensure that Hertfordshire residents can benefit from this economic success now and in the future. An important area during the pandemic has been to support our high streets and town centres, and Tony Kingsbury, leader of Welwyn Hatfield Borough Council, has led this work area and will tell you more about that shortly. The Growth Board will ensure that the climate emergency and carbon reduction ambitions of the council partners will be taken forward through its place-based work, allied with the Hertfordshire Climate Change and Sustainability Partnership. Matt Partridge, Chief Executive of Stevenage Borough Council, will tell you more about that shortly. And now I'm going to hand over to Neil Hayes, the Chief Executive of Hertfordshire Local Enterprise Partnership, and Councillor Maurice Bright, Leader of Hertsmere Borough Council and Deputy Leader of Hertfordshire County Council, who can tell you how we are making Hertfordshire investment ready.
Thank you. Can I have the next slide, please? I just thought it'd be useful to give you some broader background before getting into the particular work around sectors and clusters about the work the LEP and the Growth Board have been working on in relation to strategic issues on the economy, many of which you'll see in some way, shape or form, hopefully over the next few days and weeks. There is a revised skills strategy which is due to be published at the end of this month, which is reflecting on the changes of our economy in terms of the pandemic, how we can transition people to new skills and how we can encourage further lifelong learning and development. Likewise, we have an enterprise innovation strategy due that's imminent, that's talking about making sure we've got adequate go-on space and startup space, trying to attract inward investment into the county, and looking at other areas about how we can develop and grow our businesses. We then have embarked on a series of growth cluster and sector analysis to develop long-term plans about how we grow these in our economy. And I'll be talking about Cell and Gene, and Councillor Bright will be talking about film and TV. As you see on the chart, there are further ones due. So we will then be looking at advancing manufacturing and engineering, sustainable construction, and IC and digital over the coming months. And we're also working with our Growth Board colleagues in terms of looking at some of the wider parameters around growth, what we're talking around sort of foundations for good growth or responsible growth, which will looking at the impacts of things such as digital, both in terms of technology, infrastructure and usage, but how we move towards our economy around to be more low carbon led and a clean economy, but also how we build back in terms of inclusive growth. So we make sure that all elements of our economy in terms of people and places can benefit from this wider growth. So as you hopefully you'll be able to see, there's a number of sort of studies going on and pieces of work that will help us enrich our strategy moving forward around the economy. And on the next slide, please. So the cell and gene therapy cluster, for those who are unfamiliar, has been in existence for approximately 10 years now, starting with a joint venture between GSK and the Wellcome Trust, as well as investment from other public bodies. And that essentially created the cell and gene catalyst. We then had a cell and gene catapult, which is a manufacturing facility, all of which have grown exponentially over the past 10 years. And as you can see, from significant amounts of public investment nationally, 150 million, and now leveraging somewhere in the means of around £1 billion worth of private equity investment. And as mentioned by Councillor Taylor, this is now of global significance. So much that it's been recognised by the Department of International Trade as a high potential opportunity zone. What this means is that this has a prominence now on overseas trade missions, in terms of any work that's done about promoting international trade from nationally from the government. That particular cell and gene catalyst is now on the radar, so to speak, in terms of where it needs to go. But we're now working through trying to catch up with this exponential growth and trying to support businesses to move on, to grow, but also making sure that there are wider benefits. This is not just about sort of level 4, level 5 degree plus skills. There's a lot of jobs in around as the sector grows into manufacturing, ancillary office. They all need professional services, and also particularly technician level jobs that are related to them. Go to the next slide, please. So key stakeholders, both public and private, are really bought into the growth of the cluster. I just wanted to illustrate that as well as having a plan in place, we've also been very busy over the past 12 months or so in securing resources to support the cluster moving forward. The LEP secured £3 million from the Getting Building Fund to establish what is called a cell and gene therapy integration laboratory. Essentially, that is a training facility in Sycamore House, which is an adjacent building to GSK, and that's opening very soon. I've mentioned the high potential opportunity zone prospectus, so this will be out in the next few weeks, which is putting Stevenage on the map. We're also supporting the University of Hertfordshire, along with other partners, are putting a bid together to form an Institute of Technology from a DFE competition, and it's focusing on particularly around cell and gene, life sciences, but also digital and built environment, going back to those key growth sectors that we have. And hopefully we'll know in the autumn the outcome of that. But in terms of business investment, this is a very real growing cluster. You know, we are currently, as the LAP, dealing with 2 major investment inquiries from overseas. Some of you may have seen in the press already that mentioned about one of the companies that's on the campus expanding into Stevenage town centre. You know, the cluster is ready to grow, and increasingly it wants to grow within Stevenage and surrounding areas. So how do we make sure that growth can be retained within Hertfordshire where possible? Next slide, please. So the action plan, when published, has come up with a list of priorities. The idea is that, you know, we go along short, medium and long term, making sure that we give confidence to the private sector investors that we have a long-term plan for their growth within the county. But there are some very immediate issues. We're currently, a number of us within the Growth Board, are working to try and get some infrastructure work to help unlock the remaining bit of the GSK site that comprises most of this campus to be developed. Requires some enabling infrastructure work around transport. We also want to make sure that the rest of Gunnelswood Road, the major industrial area in Stevenage, can be more focused towards unlocking the growth of this industry. We're exploring with Growth Board partners around investment development, trying to ensure that we can invest in land assembly and retain these sites for high value rather than going to other uses. There are works we're doing around building additional skills and throughput, and particularly working with the cell and gene catalyst on that. And we're also talking with Innovate UK, the national innovation body, to help extend the catapult. That's already been expanded once already, and now it's full to the rafters, so it needs to grow again. And also increasingly coming out from these sector plans, we're understanding there's underlying needs around digital tech and things like AI, etc. So there's a lot of work involved in sort of joining the dots in relation to those. If we go to the next slide, I can then pass on to Councillor Bright, who's going to talk to you about film and TV.
Thank you very much indeed, Neil. I'm just waiting for the speaker picture to come over to me. I think I have my camera and video on. That's good. I hope everyone can see me. That photograph we just saw actually just before this page was a still from The Crown, which everyone will know by now is a hugely award-winning drama by Left Bank Sony Pictures, and it's based at Elstree Studios. And what's been very interesting, because I'm chairman of the board of Elstree Studios, was when they were filming, I remember when they were filming with Matt Smith and Claire Foy, and you used to get people walking from one end of the studios to the other in like a royal procession as they were going up to a stage. And I'd stand there with other people, and we just stand there as though this was the real royal family. You put your head down. People say, what are you doing? They're just actors, but you kind of get a bit carried away with it. But that's what we always used to do. But anyway, welcome to this particular section of the Hertfordshire Growth Board. I chair the creative industries, the media and panel for the Herts Growth Board. And it's extraordinary to see exactly what is going on. And as we can see what is going on nationally with the film and television sector, it's extremely buoyant, substantial demand at the moment for studio space. And this is very much as a consequence of the advent and the continued evolution of streaming services and providers such as Netflix, Amazon, and so on, as well as the traditional film and drama producers also vying for space. And so we've seen a boon for the need for stage space. There's a picture here of what's called Sky Studios Elstree, which is a new 32-acre state-of-the-art television and film studio near to the Hartsmere Elstree Studios. It's actually at Bournemouth, and it will be home to 12 to 14 new sound stages. It will be Sky, NBC, Comcast, Universal biggest production facility and HQ outside of America, and it's about 250 million to build, with an estimated £3 billion of production investment in the first 5 years. Once it opens next year, and we'll be bringing in 2,000 jobs. And the footprint includes for Southwest Hertfordshire, but extends all the way up to Pinewood, which is in Buckinghamshire, Shepperton in Surrey. The studio is opening now in Shenfield up near Reading, as well as all around us, Dagenham and so on. What's important when we talk about new state-of-the-art studios are two things. Firstly, we've heard about climate emergency and what we're doing to do our part. And it's interesting to note that Sky will be, I think, one of the first, if not the first, carbon neutral studios in Europe. That's very important to us within Hertfordshire, to ensure that, yes, we bring business in and jobs in, but we make sure they're sustainable. And also jobs. Jobs is very important. We have a lot of studios being built, a lot of stages being built. What we don't want to find is that we don't have enough people to actually fill and frequent. And if we go into the next slide, you can have a look at a snapshot, if you like, on the next slide, which is the film and television employment across Hertfordshire and Buckinghamshire as well. And I don't think this actually gives the complete story. This gives a very interesting story. But of course, as stages are continuing to be built, they need to be occupied, not just with talent in front of the camera and the skilled creatives to bring those productions into effect and to our screens, but everything from carpenters to costumiers need to be trained up as well. Someone said to me recently, oh, well, it's not creating new jobs because they're just going to be new facilities and people will go from one facility to the other to as freelancers do. My line has been, historically, that may have been the case, but with the sheer number of producers of content now, there needs to be more people to make that content. It's a voracious beast. It eats everything you throw at it. People will watch everything that is being produced. And so actually that's not the case. There does need to be a training up and more skills and more jobs, because ultimately we will end up in a position, if we're not careful, in 5 years' time, of having huge numbers of empty stages, but not enough people to help frequent them. And that would not be a good idea. So that's something we are very, very seriously working on within the Growth Board to ensure about skills and so on. And if we go to the next slide, this gives you a better indication. I'm not quite sure who that is, to be perfectly honest with you. I'm not sure if that's a character from a new Disney film, but whoever it is, it just fills up a bit of space on the right-hand side. The important stuff is that, as I've said, we don't want to find it in 5 years. We have a glut of stage space, but a dearth of trained people to work on productions. One of the reasons why this country is so popular for particularly Americans to come and produce here is because of the skills and the number of awards that are won for special effects and so on tends still very much to be the expertise from this country, and we need to ensure that that continues. So you can have a look at the priorities that we have there. Got to look at apprenticeships and making sure that we can get people into those apprenticeships. And skills transition is going to be very important, because, you know, train someone up to be a electrician, a carpenter and so on. Well, we can quite happily take those in and use those people in the screen industries, because they're very important basic needs in order to build the sets and put together the fabric, if you like, of what then the talent in front of the camera performs in front of. And whatever we talk about CGI and green screens and special effects, there is very much now more a move towards proper sets again, because people can really tell, and with high definition, they prefer proper sets. Excuse me. Identifying and promoting potential sites which could potentially expand The footprint of film and television is very important. We know that we have, as we said, Sky. We've had an expression of interest from a company called Bidwells to build near where Sky is. Hartsmith-owned Elstree Studios is putting up 2 new stages for next spring, thanks to government funding via the LEP and funding from the local authority. We know that Leavesden is expanding, already a huge a centre of production, is expanding, and so nearby Caldecott and other areas within Hertfordshire are as well. And it is going to be important that we ensure that somewhere amongst all those different locations, we're in a position to help work together with places like the University of Hertfordshire, like the Elstree Screen Arts, which is formerly the UTC, Oakland's colleges and so on, to really get people together and train them up so that we can be running parallel while the buildings are being put up, with training people to help with those facilities and logistics once those facilities are built. And then ensure that a wider approach to digital infrastructure is fully aligned with the needs of film and television. We hear it across all industry, across all business. One of the great planks of the government's ambitions are to ensure as good connectivity as we can have. This is not a wish or desire, it is a must. If we are to lead the way, we must have the right type of connectivity in order, and a very high spec, a very high level. When you think about the virtue of the fact that nothing is recorded on film anymore, it's all filmed and then sent down lines to be edited and judged in America for the daily rushes and so on. So we must have the right infrastructure as well. So we do understand the issues that come, but it's a great position to be in. It's a great success story. It is our responsibility to ensure that it remains successful and we build on that success. Build and they will come. Yes, they are building and they will come, as long as Hertfordshire Growth Board does its bits to ensure that we can get the people of our shire trained up as well as we can to help those productions once those stages are built. I'm grateful for your time. I'm going to hand back now just to Neil Hayes to take us through the last sheet of this particular section.
Thank you. I just wanted to touch on some sort of common issues as we were developing these strategic plans around sectors, which we are actively going ahead and addressing. So, I mean, one of the things, it sounds obvious, but we really need an ongoing sort of industry-facing resource to kind of engage with these clusters, work on a day-to-day basis with the industry, work with local authorities on relation to issues around spatial planning, working with skills agencies to make sure the skills throughput is there, someone to hold the ring essentially to grow those sectors. And we've had a very positive discussion at our own board last week about bringing that capacity into the LEP. And also in relation to that high potential opportunity area, I think one of the things that we've historically kind of undersold is Hertfordshire's investment proposition. We've kind of relied on people necessarily just sort of finding their way through. I think now with a competitive market, we need to make sure we've got a resource that's not only working with developers, working with sectors, working with business decision makers, but we're also working with the supply of that in relation to skills agencies and local authorities, in making sure that we can give absolute cast iron guarantees on, you invest in Hertfordshire and this is what you'll get. So for your £1 here, you will generate £3, £4, £5, £6, £7 worth of additional value into the economy. Because that's essentially what a lot of these companies are able to do. So we need to exploit that even more. And as was touched on earlier, the key site availability is becoming a critical issue. Prior to the COVID-19 and the recovery planning, we'd already been working on a key employment sites issue. We know that there was challenges in relation to sites being turned over to housing, etc. And whilst housing is still very important for Hertfordshire, we need to make sure there are jobs to go with the homes. And the worst thing we can do is just essentially lose these companies who will just move because they can't grow. So again, maybe having some resource around that, trying to pinpoint specifically what sites we can move forward and work with the development industry to invest. I think finally, I just wanted to add that the thing I can take from this and speak for Councillor Bright and others is that there's a real keenness from those in the industry to have a dialogue with the likes of the Growth Board and particularly partners and leaders. They feel as if they're making big investment commitments, which they are, and therefore, you know, they welcome a dialogue with public leaders and for them to give a real view about how committed they are to places. So it's really telling in terms of when you have a dialogue, how you know, they are here for a reason, and they want to invest, and they want to make sure that, you know, wider residents and other businesses can benefit from that growth, which I think is a really positive. And we'll be working on sector groups coming out of this piece of work to maintain that dialogue and make sure that what we're doing meets industry needs. I think that section is finished now, and I'll be passing on to a video message. I think that's right. Sorry, I just need to move something up in front of my screen.
I want to touch on the housing aspect of the growth board's work. We've heard a lot about the progress of working together as a growth board, and we've been talking about the economic and business needs, but no doubt housing is a priority for the growth board, as it is for the government, and I'm sure for many here this is not news, but the government set great store on delivering X number of homes per year, but for the growth board it's more than just delivering those. It's about delivering a commitment to quality, to good growth and to good placemaking. And we'll touch upon in the next few minutes just a couple of the schemes, strategic schemes that Hertfordshire's looking at in order to deliver some of those changing environments that people are seeking. The pressure for housing delivery in Hertfordshire is great. We know from our demand and supply, and the changes in working patterns and people moving out of London, and perhaps not the need to live so close or into London. It's going to make a difference to how the housing market, I think, generates over the next few years. I will touch upon a couple of the schemes that are listed there, the Harlow and that Linda will talk about shortly, and the Hemel Garden communities, which is very close to and very close to where I live. I think this slide, just to demonstrate the challenges we face in terms of delivering on the Hertfordshire Growth Board's commitment to 100,000 homes, new homes in Hertfordshire. That would require to follow the blue trajectory of delivering around 7,000 homes a year over the life of the plan, and currently we're delivering just under 5. So, and that gap is not closing. So the challenge to increase delivery and to deliver on that 100,000 homes is quite significant, and will require quite a lot of work across the sector over the next few years to help improve that delivery mechanism. And I'm sure this will be familiar again to many, but just to emphasise the situation, there's a lot of green on this slide, which is where the government sets the test of the housing delivery test and whether we're delivering against our targets. And the green is those councils which are deemed to be, or those areas which are deemed to be delivering against their target. And there's quite a lot of green on there, but not so much green in Hertfordshire. In fact, 7 of the 10 areas in Hertfordshire are orange. And that means that they're delivering under 75% of their target and require to provide additional buffer zone. One of them is required for an action plan, and 2 are green. So clearly, as I was saying earlier, the challenge for delivering in Hertfordshire is quite significant. I think this demonstrates, just taking through some of the issues that we do face here, there is a decrease in supply of affordable and supported housing. Hertfordshire is an expensive area to live, and there has been a reduction in the grant government subsidy for the supply of socially rented homes. And I know from our own authorities' work that delivering socially rent or low cost housing does require a high degree of subsidy, and that's not always easily available. We do have an ageing population, and there are significant challenges around land availability. We just and the public perception, I think, around the use of how much greenbelt we use in order to deliver our housing requirements, and the balance that we need to strike. We've already touched upon several occasions the climate emergency and the need to do more around our environment, and we need to balance those needs off. Increases in clients with complex needs, we find increasingly that people are presenting, particularly in the socially rented sector for housing, do come with, in some occasions, with more complex needs and need more support in order to access the housing market. Reductions in related support, funding ratios, and the impact of COVID-19 on the flexible working patterns. As I said earlier, I think as that comes through, that will make a difference to what our housing market might look like in Hertfordshire, and the way in which people travel and access employment across the county. So I want to just show some of the things that we're doing to accelerate housing delivery, using our housing and planning intelligence to create an evidence-based pipeline of housing schemes coming forward, which is what we want to do, and to be aware of what strategic sites are coming through the system. So, as I said earlier, there are a few key sites that we've got in Hertfordshire which are capable of delivering quite significant numbers of new homes, and focusing on those and trying to bring those schemes forward. Working closer with the registered social landlords, the Homes England and the government to understand the pressures that we have and to access as much funding or whatever funding opportunities are available. We have been able to do that in terms of taking forward some of our major schemes, but as always, funding remains a challenge. Planning and prioritisation of our key strategic sites, and understanding and supporting the needs of traditional and as was touched on earlier, the off-site manufacturing, which is a new and growing sector of the market. Managing and increasing our relationships with investment and delivery partners and agencies. I mean, as I said, working very closely with government and its agencies, we're looking to develop a developer forum later this year, so work closer with the development industry and understand their needs and requirements. As I said, off-site manufacturing and hoping to secure some of that capacity within Hertfordshire, and working through the LEP and their work with the construction transformation partners. A lot going on in terms of understanding and taking forward the development needs. One of the areas in which we're hoping to support the off-site manufacturing is through the Hertfordshire Enterprise Innovation Quarter, which is the enterprise zone jointly shared on the edge of Hemel Hempstead between Hemel and St Albans, and also taking in a couple of Hertfordshire's world leading facilities at Rothampstead and the Building Research Establishment at Garston, all part of the enterprise zone, and looking to develop and work with those green and growing sectors that, such as off-site manufacturing, which have the capacity to reinvigorate the delivery rate of housing across the country, but more particularly in raising to that challenge I was talking about of Hertfordshire delivering 100,000 homes over the plan period. Now, just to touch upon a couple of the site, one of those specific sites I referred to, the Hemel Garden Community site. This is a project jointly on land between St Albans and Dacorum, supported by Hertfordshire County Council and other agencies. It seeks to deliver around, as it says, around 11,000 new homes jointly between, say, Dacorum and St Albans, around just over 5,000 on each, and to support up to 11 or 10,000 new jobs across that sector. But also, very important to the Hemel Garden Communities project is the transformational approach that it can have to the existing new town of Hemel Hempstead. This is going to wrap around the east and north of Hemel Hempstead. It's a major extension to the existing town, but it also has the capacity, and I think this is where we really need to rise to the challenge to address some of the other issues that we know new towns have. Neil referred a little while ago to the KPMG report and the resilience of some of our towns, and Hemel didn't score particularly well in that. We recognise the challenges that Hemel Town Centre and its environment has, and weaving through the Garden Communities project is the desire to see the benefits of this development weaving its way through the regeneration of Hemel Hempstead, and we're taking those projects forward locally over the next couple of years. So it's a bit more, Hemel Garden Community is designed to be, as I said at the start of this, it's not just about delivering homes, plonking them down and ticking the box because we've achieved our numbers. We want to achieve a transformational approach to housing delivery that actually creates neighbourhoods that people want to live in, recognises the changing as a pattern of life and work, maybe create more opportunities for working within the home working environment to be recognised, and that people will not need to travel so much to their work, at the same time as creating hopefully lots of jobs in the growing sectors around the enterprise zone and around the Hemel Garden Communities, so that we have a whole life work experience in a setting and environment which is welcoming and well placed, and delivers all of the aspects of the lifestyle that people want, that not just considering the number of homes we can provide, but the way in which they're provided and the quality of the environment that people live in.
Good afternoon. I'm Councillor Tony Kingsbury, leader of Welwyn Hatfield Borough Council, and I chair the work stream looking at reinvigorating our town centres. Next slide, please. Looking at our vision, the COVID-19 pandemic has accelerated a change in the way our communities interact with their town centres and high streets forever. As leaders of place, councils along with BIDs have already been working hard to repurpose their town centres and respond to longer term trends in how our high streets are used. Together with local enterprise partnerships, place managers played an important role in supporting small to medium-sized businesses throughout the disruption of the COVID-19 and in distributing the grant funding, providing a lifeline to retail, hospitality and leisure sectors. We all recognise that the pace of change and intervention will need to quicken as a result of the pandemic and in response to the climate emergency. The dramatic loss of footfall and suspension of the daily commute will exacerbate the vacuum in our town centres. The implication of these twin blows could be significant if we fail to take action now. We recognise that this provides both an imperative for the Growth Board to act and an opportunity to rethink the purpose of our centres. High streets of the future will need to become multi-purpose locations, combining retail and hospitality, amenities with residential, education, healthcare, cultural, technology, community, and more. In short, the pandemic has made it essential for places such as Hertfordshire to galvanise their centres for a new way of living. Our vision for Hertfordshire is to have a vibrant range of town centres that are forward-looking and resilient, climate change aware, and ready to respond to emerging opportunities driven by commercial and behavioural changes. Thanks to the proactive leadership of the Growth Board and a commitment to a wider partnership working, evidenced during the pandemic, we are in a very strong position to deliver. Next slide, please. Looking at how we have explored the vision. On a practical level, Hertfordshire Growth Board moved fast to produce a checklist to help town centres reopen safely, recover quickly from COVID-19, following a leaders' workshop led by the Institute of Place Management back in March. The checklist, issued to all local authority partners and published on the Herts Growth Board website, aims to help revive and maintain footfall safely and tackle future challenges in a consistent, evidence-based way. It identifies small interventions that can be made at a local level, enabling and empowering stakeholders to involve their own places and adapt to what is the new normal. It also includes best practice resources and encourages local authorities and partners to use their immediate plans for high street recovery and the safe revival of footfall in Hertfordshire's town centres to help pave the way for a long-term transformation of town centres and future vitality. We know through the work of the local resilience forums that places that work together are in a better position to respond and recover more quickly. This checklist is a great example of how well we're working together as a county by equipping our place leaders with the tools to proactively adapt to their high street plans and tackle future challenges in their areas. So moving on to the next steps. The next slide, please, sorry. So together as a group, we're working from bottom up and top down with our towns and districts, responding to their needs and priorities. This collaboration is between people who love their towns and high streets and place leaders who understand that to seize new opportunities and embrace the future, we need to work together and start thinking creatively. It is the start of a conversation, reconnecting communities with their high streets and town centres, as well as meeting our needs, such as housing, access to services, better public health, jobs, and sustainable transport options. This conversation is happening not just on the high street near you, but up and down the country, and also on a global level. From Paris to Portland, cities are attempting to give residents everything they need within a few minutes of their front doors. Can the 15-minute city concept come to our local neighbourhoods too? Fostering collaboration between places, businesses and policymakers can also help rethink the journey to work with a focus on lower carbon, more customer oriented and better connected transport networks. Other important areas include prioritising investment in high-speed broadband and 5G connectivity to create greener, more sustainable and smarter towns and ways of living. The COVID pandemic sped up transformational change by influencing that change here and now and reimagining of towns as cultural and recreational hubs that will act as magnets for businesses and jobs. We can help transform our less prosperous areas and build back better. Thank you very much for listening today, and I'll now pass you to Matt Partridge, the Chief Executive of Stevenage Borough Council. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. I'll be giving a few minutes of your time this afternoon to talk about how we're working together at county level to address the climate change challenge. We can go to the next slide, please. I want to be clear at the outset, though, that what we're doing at county level will not duplicate or override the efforts being made within districts and borough councils, or that of HCC or the LEP either. This is about additionality, identifying large-scale, cross-cutting policy and project opportunities will help us all to achieve our respective targets in the future. As mentioned by Councillor Richard Roberts earlier today, I think it would be fair to say that the climate change issue is the biggest challenge that we probably face in our time. And if it took part in the LGA conference earlier this week, you'd have heard it mentioned on numerous occasions. It was also the keynote topic of this morning's East of England LGA session as well, which some of us were attending. So what's been happening at county level within Hertfordshire? Well, back in January 2020, the Herts Leaders Group agreed to the formation of a county-wide climate change partnership, snappily called the HCCSP. The political lead at county level is Councillor Linda Hazy, leader of East Herts District Council, with me as a lead officer on behalf of the CEO's group, supported by Mark Kemp, who is HCC's Director of Environment and Infrastructure. The partnership has been meeting for over a year now, has met virtually during that time, which will have saved about 8,000 miles of travelling. So hopefully we get a gold star for leading by example in that regard. The core attendees of the meetings are your lead portfolio holders and officers, who in part are tasked with sharing what comes out of the sessions locally and bringing great ideas in to share with colleagues too. Much work has been done during the last year despite COVID-19, and I'll give you a whistle-stop tour of the key focuses and activities of the partnership shortly. At the June 2021 meeting, the chair, Councillor Graham McAndrew, was re-elected for a further year, and he will be supported by Councillor Phil Williams as vice chair from Three Bills District Council. Graham is very focused on this being an inclusive partnership, and with that in mind, both he and I met with the lead members and officers for each local authority at the start of this year to discuss how the partnership was working and performing, and to help identify future priorities. A report was then presented to the June meeting, which outlined a number of key themes. These were largely focused on matters such as developing capacity, improving linkages to key county groups, resourcing the implementation of our action plans, raising public awareness of the work of the partnership, and the need to lobby more effectively at national level too. Go to the next slide, please. So very early on, we established a county-wide officer group to support the work of the partnership, along with dedicated subgroups to develop the priority theme action plans, which cover the areas of water, biodiversity, carbon reduction, and transport. I'm very pleased to be able to report that 3 of the 4 action plans have been prepared and approved by HCCSP already, following extensive engagement with key stakeholders. The 4th plan, which focuses upon one of our largest opportunity areas, transport, was presented in draft form to the partnership at its June meeting, and all being well will be brought back for the next meeting to sign off by the board. It's important to note, though, that the plans will never and can never be set in stone, because innovation is constantly taking place in this space, and there are increasing public demands for action to be taken, noting that all of us have climate change plans in place and many have declared an emergency as well. So to bring this to life, I'll briefly run through a couple of example aims and actions from our plans, starting with biodiversity. And the aim here is around enhancing biodiversity through suitable land management delivered directly by partners or through partnership working with stakeholder engagement. And the action we're taking here, or one of them, is to develop a biodiversity baseline using Natural England's metric to quantify existing levels of biodiversity across Hertfordshire. The contract to establish the baseline is currently being let, having been signed off by the partnership. And one more example with regards to transport. So the aim here is to deliver zero carbon emissions for local authority transport operations by 2030. And the action we're taking is to undertake a county-wide fleet transformation audit to cover current and future known plans. The audit will also outline carbon reduction actions currently being undertaken and those which are under consideration, and it may help us with sharing our learning again at county level. We can go to the next slide, please. In most areas of life, and in perhaps this one in particular, action speaks louder than words, and we do of course recognise there's no time to waste. Some actions, activities, as shown on this slide, are specific to the theme in question. Others relate to broader and more cross-cutting matters such as planning, for example, policies and master plans, or matters such as behaviour change, or shared campaigns and lobbying as well. In terms of recent achievements, we've established HCCSP web pages now, so you can find us on the net, and thanks to colleagues at East Herts for the hard work in putting those websites in place. We've commenced some shared communications campaigns, such as the current Affinity Water initiative to save our streams. We've collectively lobbied government in support of the sewage discharge bill, and we ran an inaugural webinar with external speakers from the Herts and Middlesex Wildlife Trust and the LEP at the latter part in last year. You can find out about our work at hccsp.org.uk, and all of the themed action plans will be uploaded to the website very soon. Next slide, please. So what next then? Well, a key focus in the coming months are going to be communications. We need to engage more effectively with our communities to raise awareness and to help residents and businesses to make their more informed choices. We have further engagement events coming up, including a session on the 15th of July, which will focus on biodiversity and agriculture and food systems with key speakers from Rothamsted Research, the National Farmers Union and the Soil Association. Further to this, plans have been developed for a Herts COP26 event later on this year as well. And the partnership is giving thought to its next priority themes, which could be focused on matters such as adaptation, tackling inequalities, and behaviour change, noting my previous point regarding helping people to make informed choices. I certainly want to look back on my involvement in years to come with a sense of pride. I suspect this is one topic where we all would feel exactly the same way. So with that very important topic very briefly covered, I'm going to move on now to the second part of my contribution this afternoon, which is focused upon community wealth building. So next slide, please. Thank you very much. So within Hertfordshire, Councillor Sharon Taylor is the lead, who's a leader of SBC, is a political lead, and I'm the officer lead. The term community wealth building, which I refer to as CWB from now on, has resonated in economics for some time. It's not a term which is immediately easy to define, though, I would admit that. It focuses on reducing the leakage of money and resources from local communities through good economic decisions being made. It grew as a concept in cities such as Detroit in Michigan, USA, where, in spite of concerted efforts to revive a failing economy, local communities were not benefiting from job creation. Multinational companies operating in the city had little connection, and as a consequence, local businesses were not benefiting from the economic revival. So the CWB in this context focused on targeting the procurement policies of major public and private sector organisations to seek to create a more equitable opportunity for local businesses to compete for contracts. This approach was taken in total recognition of the impact such decisions can have on local job creation. It also looked at opportunities to strengthen local social economies, such as the community enterprises and cooperatives, which by their nature were focused on local community benefit. In the UK, bodies such as the Centre for Local Economic Studies, CLES, have worked in places like Preston to embed such principles within their procurement processes. In Preston, this resulted in an additional £74 million investment into the local economy and £200 million into the wider Lancashire economy. So to be clear, that the potential benefits and opportunities for areas that are prepared to embrace this as a concept are very, very real. So following some pilot work undertaken in Stevenage during 2020 and presentations to both the North East Central and South West Growth Corridor boards, it was agreed that CWB should become an overarching theme for future Hertfordshire. If the county is to remain investment ready as we start to recover from the pandemic and create the right conditions for future growth, we think that CWB can help to play a major role. There are many opportunities under the Hertfordshire Delivery Ready theme to drive jobs, apprenticeships, and further local supply chain opportunities through housing, infrastructure, and delivery across the county. A county-wide officer group with reps from all of the local authorities has been established to start shaping this agenda within Hertfordshire. The working group has identified a number of opportunities to develop and strengthen a Hertfordshire approach to unlocking economic benefits as a consequence of growth. And these include coordination around skills gaps and employment opportunities in local areas, with a particular focus on the economic inclusion of those furthest away from the labour market. Joint work on public sector procurement across Hertfordshire to maximise social value and create further opportunities for Hertfordshire businesses. Joint work on strategic planning across Hertfordshire to maximise social value from major development and infrastructure schemes, and the strengthening of the social economy, particularly the growth of social enterprise sector, to create economic models to respond to community needs. The group have developed a significant bid to the Community Renewal Fund that was supported by the Hertfordshire LEP to seek to accelerate this programme in aid of our respective COVID recovery efforts. The bid includes establishing specialist support for procurement leads across the county to maximise social value through contracts, coordination of activity from a strategic planning perspective to maximise developer contributions, and investment in local economies and support to drive the employment and skills agenda across the county through a delegated grant scheme. We hope to hear the bid has been successful later in July. That said, regardless of the outcome of the bid, we've now established strong foundations and for further partnership working on this agenda. We hope to broaden this work to include other public sector bodies in due course, like the NHS and the police. Whether we refer to CWB as driving social value, unlocking local economic development, or simply buying local and benefiting local, the ultimate aim is to ensure that Hertfordshire does build back better. So at that point, can I thank you for listening to me? I'm going to hand over now to Councillor Chris White, who's leader of St Albans City and District Council.
Thank you. If I could have the one and only slide. I only have one slide, but I do have the pleasure of revealing the poll results after I've finished. This is a potted history of planning, really to explain how on earth we got here and where we've come from. And it's a strange old route. Post-war, we had regional planning through Surplan, a gigantic indirectly elected body which looked at planning for the whole of what used to be called the Southeast. Within that, the county councils would develop structure plans, which were high level, very infrastructure focused documents indicating in broad terms where housing and other growth should take place. And then district councils would be expected to do local plans in accordance with those structure plans. It was a system which actually seemed to work and which people largely understood, and therefore was ripe for reform. In the late 1990s, the structure planning function was shifted gradually to regional level. So you had regional spatial strategies, largely the same sort of idea, with county councils and equivalent bodies having a similar role in being able to influence them, but fundamentally the regional assemblies, which were a mixture of indirectly elected councillors and other interests, including business interests, would have a key role in developing these strategies. This was got rid of by the coalition government, and the whole structure planning layer, the infrastructure layer, if you like, was removed, and we ended up with fundamentally district councils talking to each other and having a duty to cooperate. Inevitably, that has meant some tensions in terms of where growth should go, a feeling that district councils inevitably are a little reluctant to say, oh yes, we'll take all the housing growth in Hertfordshire for obvious political reasons. And of course, duty to cooperate from the word go was a recipe for lawyers to be involved and councils to end up in court with each other. So there's got to be something better than that. And we believe that the Hertfordshire Growth Board is something better than that. It's recreating the best aspects of structure plans, which is councils working together, where infrastructure, as you've just been hearing from Matt, is key to our thinking, and where local plans, as far as practicable, coordinate together. But the key thing we've got back, I think, is the county council being involved again in planning with its particular roles in relation to transport and education planning. And that's got to be good news. But further than that, we've also got the LEP being involved, as you've seen through presentations today. So all the players who need to be involved in planning for the future are now sitting round a table. And we've got to the point now where we're not doing it in a notionally smoke-filled room, but we're doing it in public with agendas and minutes being published as we go along. So I think hopefully this is the best of all possible worlds. And for those of you on districts who may think, hang on a second, aren't we going to lose all our planning powers? Well, no, the constitution of the HGB is very clear. Any district can walk away if they feel that it's not working for them. So consensus is absolutely key to this. No, you can't have a situation which 9 districts turn on the 10th and give them a hard time in planning terms. So hopefully this will work. Now, right at the end, I've mentioned the South West Herts JSP. That's an example of one of the bodies which is working within this structure. I chair it on behalf of the 5 district councils on the west of the county, and the county council also has representation, and that is doing work looking further ahead at where planning should be going, but again is part of coordinating the thinking of the various districts, and that will shortly be producing a number of documents which are relevant to the west, and there is a similar body for the remaining districts which is starting to go along the same sort of tracks. So that's from me. Now I'm going to have a look at the polls who've all been voting away. Number 1 is what is the biggest growth challenge facing Hertfordshire? And the answers to that were 45% felt that providing new infrastructure to support population growth, 24% delivering needed new homes and house price affordability, and another 24% saying sustainability and the climate agenda. Poll 2, which of the following aims and objectives should be a priority for HGB? 30% said delivery of infrastructure, 17% said raising the county's profile for both government and external investors. The third, what is Hertfordshire's biggest draw for external investors? 58% said location, and 28% said the willingness of HGB members to collaborate for growth. The fourth poll, should the HGB model be adopted by more counties in the UK? 61% said yes, 35% understandably were unsure. 5, what level of priority is, 5, what level of priority is place-based growth to the levelling up agenda? So place-based growth to the levelling up agenda, 54% said high, 24% were unsure. And then I think we've got another couple. Has this session increased your understanding of what we are trying to achieve? 90% said yes. That's good. I don't know. I think there's another one about to come through, unless I've missed it. Okay, just waiting for that. And yes, finally, how would you like to be kept informed on HGB's activities in the future? 4%, I think it's just for, sorry, 45%, I was going to say, via email and stakeholder bulletins, and 52% in events like this. So I guess as I move into next steps, what we learn is that quite a number of you like events like this, so we need to do more of them. There's about 96 participants, but that includes presenters. But we also need to make sure that you're emailed about what's going on as we go through. Obviously, you can find out what we're up to in the normal way, but we need to be proactive. So beyond that, next steps are that we will continue to work on all of these things. There's a lot to be done. There's, in particular, as Matt said, we need a response from the government about our bid for funding. We are talking about funding way beyond what local government or the LEP can produce. We need central government help if we're going to achieve probably any of the ambitions of the Growth Board. So that's it from me on behalf of the team, and it suffices me simply to say at this point, thank you and goodbye.